Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, and Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other in a community full of their affinity groups. And they can tap into various resources into finance and health and career. But more importantly, this show is all about athletes transitioning out of sport. It's such a major issue today, mental health, financial literacy. When the athletes don't with their sport, they just don't know what to do. So what I do is I interview former college and professional athletes, and I talk about their transition out of sport, ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. It's all about teaching inspiring athletes that there is life after sports. So excited today to have a close friend of mine, James Toale. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's a pleasure. So James, he played baseball. He played a couple years in college, played at Miami Dade and Indian River down here in South Florida. And unfortunately, he had an injury that basically ended his career. And so he went on and continued his college, but ultimately he just always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was great at fixing things and being an athlete, being a leader, and all that. So he started a handyman business. He built that into a very successful company here in South Florida, ultimately doing painting and pressure cleaning. Got into a limo business. You'll see there's a trail of different types of business, and ultimately, and he'll share a story a little bit, like some ups and downs in his personal life that led to him getting into network marketing, and had a lot of success with it. And today he is the founder and CEO of 47. Very excited to be launching his new company with he and his wife Jamie, and bringing out a really exciting product, which again we'll talk about more later. So James, when we one thing too is funny is like I call him Jim, but I'm gonna be official because he's James. So I will call him James throughout the podcast, although I know him as Jim. So anyway, growing up playing sports, how did that shape you leading up to college?
Sports was everything in the Toale house. My father raised me and my brother since the time we were probably 3 to 4 years of age, almost like gymnasts. We were basketball and baseball players, but my father had a batting cage in our backyard with a KC pitching machine. And when we would get home from school, the first thing we would do, we were made to do, to be very honest with you, was take 100 swings, 100 foul shots, even prior to doing our homework or playing with our friends. So the Toale house, if there's any Coral Springs people out there that know the Toale brothers, you'll know what I'm talking about, because all the Coral Springs people would come out to the house and take batting practice with Coach Toale as well.
And so was there a dream of being a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
So for me, it was a little bit different growing up. I was probably following in my brother's footsteps. He had this drive for being an athlete, and he was the guy that would watch ESPN with my father, where I was the guy that wanted to be out in the garage tinkering with this and tinkering with that. And everybody knew I was going to be a business owner because my business skills started as a young kid. I grew up in Chicago prior to South Florida. And when it would snow, the neighbors would ask me to shovel the snow off their driveway so they could go to work. And I found out very quickly I could shovel a driveway, make $10 and knock on the next door and make another $10. And when the snow melted, I was washing cars, raking leaves and so forth. But back to your original question, sports, though, shaped me in so many ways. One, to learn about relationships, one, to learn about working with other people, being a team player, consistency, never quit attitude. So again, it was my sports that shaped everything for the rest of my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a common theme. And there's so much that goes into sports, and the team and the leadership and the preparation, the drive, the practice. It's a lot. And I think a lot of my guests that I talked to, say the same thing. It just really helped them. So once you got to college, and again, unfortunately, your career kind of got derailed a little bit early, but was there any type of education back then on ultimately transitioning out of sport and kind of like what comes next?
Not in any way, shape, or form, to be honest with you. We all were kind of just winging it. So coming out of high school, my brother was drafted to the Boston Red Sox, second round, 47th pick, coincidentally 47. And he had a great 10-year run. I was expected to be drafted out of high school, but ultimately all the scouts wanted me to grow a little bit more and encouraged me to go to a community college versus a 4-year school where I would get caught in the system and not be able to get drafted until my third year. So that's why I went to Miami Dade South and played for Coach Green, who was the number one scout for the Yankees, trying to obviously get drafted by the Yankees. What I can share with everybody out there is make sure that you're picking a coach that you really mesh with. Where when I got to Miami-Dade South, yes, I was a starter. Yes, I had a great batting average and did great. But me and Coach Green just didn't see eye to eye. He was a little bit more military style. I needed a little bit more flexibility. And after my first semester, I made a transition up to Indian River Community College, where the coach there was much better with his relationships with the players. And I thrived at Indian River Community College. That was a fantastic experience prior to tearing my ACL.
Yeah, and then once you obviously we'll get into more about tearing your ACL. It's just that the education is so important. I think a lot of more schools are getting better at today. I mean, obviously, like we said, like I back when I ran cross country track in college a long time ago too, there wasn't the education back then either. And I think depending on what the sport is, some sports people are better prepared. Like they know there's not a professional aspect to it. So that's kind of the end anyway. So they have their plan B, plan C, already in place. But I think today it's important that more schools get into educating not only the current athletes, but the alumni athletes as well. And just teach them you're not just James, the baseball player, Rob the runner, Susie, the swimmer. You're a real person with many years ahead of you. You just kind of have that tight plan. So
Agreed.
One thing, go ahead.
Well, and first 2 years of college is generally also just a continuation of high school. It's just general classes. So the first 2 years, you're not even heading towards where you're hoping you're going to go. So ultimately, when I ended up at Florida State, again, I always knew I was going to be a business guy, an entrepreneur. And that's where then I focused was on the business school to get everything I needed to prepare me for what was to come.
Yeah, and that's the perfect example because now you weren't tied down to the sport anymore because of the unfortunate getting hurt and all that. But yeah, and that's where that was good. So you got the education, you utilized it in the right way. So let's talk about networking, connecting. Obviously, it's an important topic, and you're great at it. But talk about the importance of it, especially while you're playing.
Relationships are everything. The Toale brothers, Toale family, we had friends across the board. And ultimately, when I got home from college and I started my first little business, which was a handyman service, it was all of those relationships that I had, the Toale family had, that I could make a phone call, let everybody know what I was doing, handyman. And basically, it was those relationships that opened up the doors and helped that business get started, which would lead to the demand of a pressure cleaning and painting business, which before you knew it, I wasn't doing the work any longer because it grew so fast. I had to hire 10 guys that became 50 guys that ultimately would become one of the biggest pressure cleaning and painting companies in South Florida. But again, it was those relationships that opened the door where if I didn't have those relationships, it would have been a much harder challenge.
Yeah, and people talk about it all the time. It was interesting. A podcast, and I was talking to actually wasn't on a podcast, but I was talking to a couple young college athletes, freshman, sophomore, and one thing they said to me is they didn't learn how to network. And again, they're still young, but they just said they really wish they would have learned back in high school because just like you said, you built those relationships. It could be your teammates, where never know where they're going to end up. It could be their parents. It could be the teachers, the coaches. It just expand your networking when you're young, and even as you go through school. I mean, some people, like I've talked to agents before, where they said the players were so zoned in on playing their sport, and then when they got done, they're like, okay, well, where's my 6-figure job? And it wasn't necessarily there because they hadn't built the relationships. They hadn't put the time in. And it's really interesting across all my different episodes I've had, just hearing the different perspectives of some of these athletes that either they did do it and had a lot of success, or they regret that they didn't, or maybe they started like later in their college or like their professional careers.
Yeah. I have something to add about sports. Sports teaches consistency, and 80-90% of my success, and I know other people's success, all has to do with consistency. You got to be there day in and day out for sports, whether you want to be there or you're not. You made a commitment. You have to be consistent. You have to see it through. And it's very similar in business. So always raised me and my brother to be men of our word. Actions speak louder than words, and mixed that with the consistency and the commitment. That's how, again, I launched my original businesses, was just do what I say I'm going to do. And if you do, okay, and charge a fair price, then naturally everyone's going to refer you to their friends because you're honest, you're genuine, you're sincere. Customer service is everything, even to the point where you might potentially lose money. It is better to pay it forward and make sure you have great relationships with people because you want those referrals. You can either have good referrals or you can have a sales force of people that are bad referrals that'll put you out of business very quickly. So customer service and commitment are very important.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you hit on that, a lot of good nuggets there. I mean, it's all about paying it forward and helping people. And, a lot of times too, I talk about how some of these younger people, I feel like, oh, well, I'm talking to this multimillionaire. Like, what can I offer to them? Well, maybe it's just that maybe it's helping their kids, or maybe it's just they want to, talk to an athlete. They're, people are enamored by athletes, or maybe they were an athlete themselves back in the day, and they would guess. So don't be afraid to open up and talk to different people. And then kind of something else that's been interesting come across, maybe give me your thoughts, is that there seems to be, it's very siloed in sports as far as networking goes, at least while they're playing in college. And some of it has to do with schedules and all that. But I see where like the football players network or hang out with the football players, and they don't necessarily hang out with the basketball or the baseball players. But what I've seen is just, tapping into that you've all done, and you kind of touched on before about growing up playing sports, is that everybody, regardless of the sport, I mean, a lot of these people have started out when they're 5, 6 years old, and they've been playing their whole life. And they, it's the teams, the practice, the preparation, everything that we talk about being an athlete. And I think there's value of that cross promotion of where, the football players do talk to the basketball and baseball players, because in the future, when the sport is done, you're all out in the real world. Why not use that affinity relationship as an athlete? Give me your thoughts on that.
You nailed it as far as don't get stuck in little cliques. Okay. My brother and I both played basketball and baseball. So we had our basketball friends, we had our baseball friends. But then besides that, and I didn't know it at the time, we were just friendly to everybody. So then we had our football player buddies. We both dated some cheerleaders and some drill team girls. So we made relationships with the cheerleaders, the drill team girls. The drill team girls hung out with the band members. So we never got stuck, like I said, in these little cliques. We tried to be friends with as many people as we possibly could, which again, just magnified the amount of people that we knew. So then later in life, there were more relationships built that I could obviously reach out to people and so forth. And I didn't get stuck in a clique. And again, I didn't know it at the time. I think it was probably, my dad mentoring me, again, having an older brother as a mentor and knowing his friends, girlfriends, and so forth, that really helped pave the way and open some doors for me. But yeah, don't get caught in those cliques.
Yeah, for sure. And then, and we'll talk later about just, how you can parlay that in your future as far as networking and all the people. So another thing, obviously, this is important to us at Alumni Direct, but talk a little about alumni engagement. And maybe, I know you went to the first two schools and then you were at Florida State. And although you weren't playing baseball at Florida State, did you notice back in college, were the alumni athletes coming back and working with the different athletes or the alumni?
They were some, but yet I don't believe enough. So with what you're doing with Alumni Direct, you've done a great job at trying to bring people together and improve that situation. Because again, back in my day, it wasn't done enough, nearly enough, where I'm seeing it being better now. But again, you're doing a great job in helping to bring people together so that we all can improve upon that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, let's tap in a little bit to more recent times. So your sons were both college hockey players, and your younger son recently just graduated. Did you see anything on that end? I mean, was he was at Bentley? Were they bringing back alumni, not just for like the golf tournaments or homecoming, but did they bring back alumni to like work with him? Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, again, it's improved over the years. All four of my kids were athletes, three boys and a girl. My daughter was big into dance, cheerleading. At the end of the day, when she went to college, she just focused on her education because she wanted to be a doctor, ultimately has become a nurse. My three boys, though, what I did a little bit differently than my father is as I watched them grow, of course, I encouraged them to play sports, but I was also looking for their passions. And my oldest, he liked the basketball, and we used to play a lot of basketball in the driveway. So even though I tried to show him other things, baseball and different things, his passion was basketball. So that's where he fueled the fire. I didn't play hockey. Now I wish I had, but my youngest two kids, I bought a wiffle ball and a ball and started teaching them how to hit, a baseball off a tee. They had no interest, and I was wondering why. And it was because I had season tickets to the Panthers, and I was taking my little boys at 3 and 5 to watch the Panthers hockey games. And they were getting all excited watching the skating and the fighting, and they liked the action. So they were like, Dad, we don't want to play baseball. We want to play hockey. So basically we fueled their fire all the way up through the AAA sports of hockey. But back to your original question, as far as Bentley, which is a business school in itself for my youngest, they actually do a really good job with their alumni. When you come out of Bentley, there is massive support when it comes to the alumni that help the kids transition into their future jobs and what have you, but lots of support at Bentley. I think they're probably an exception. I think a lot of the colleges can do better and improve. And again, your show and what you're doing is going to make a fantastic difference.
Yeah, and it is. I think if I bring this up on various podcasts and I talk to guests, it's just that schools do need. I mean, it's got to be two-way street. Obviously, the athlete needs to want to come back as well. But like I've been in a situation where talking to the athletic department with a fellow alumni who was a Hall of Famer at the school, as well as played in the NFL for 10 years. And we talked about mentoring and stuff like that. And they said that it's just hard. They don't do a really good job of re-engaging the alumni. And it's something that's so critical. I mean, it goes such a long way. And I encourage hopefully more schools to be able to do that with that. So here, I always ask these couple questions, and you probably didn't get a chance to watch any of my episodes, so there will be a surprise to James here. They're easy questions, but if you could go back in time and go back to freshman James in college, what advice, 10 words or less, would you give to him?
I was an idiot not coming back from my injury with my ACL. I was naturally gifted in sports, and sports came easier to me than my brother. I was 2.5 years younger than him, but was always able to play up with him and his friends because of the gifts that I was given. But when I again tore my ACL, I had lost my passion. So at the time, I couldn't do what I didn't love to do. So it's really important to love doing what you want to do. At the same time, looking back, I could have came back from that ACL, no problem. I was a shortstop growing up, which means I could play anywhere on the field. And actually at Indian River, I had never played first base before, but they needed my bat in the game, and they put me at first base, and I fell in love with that position. First base is, you're in almost every play. You're in all the cutoff plays. First base is an incredible position. And being that my knee might have not been exactly like it was, I didn't have to run like I had to run at shortstop or center field at first base. You know what I'm saying? So looking back, without a doubt, I could have played in the major leagues. And if I had do-over, I needed to stick it out. I needed to be consistent. Even though I have a business mind, always wanted to be a business owner. I had worked as an athlete for 10, 15 years. I needed to have stuck it out, to be honest, and played. And when that season was over, business would have always been there.
Yeah.
It would always have been there. You know what I'm saying? So looking back, dummy me, I should have continued playing.
Okay, so let's just fast forward to senior James. Like, what advice would you give him? So now you've gone through college, you're getting ready to go out in the real world. What advice would you give to him? 10 words or less.
Well, again, It's never over till you say it's over. I said it was over. I should have kept fighting. So the advice to all or anybody that's watching is never give up. Keep fighting, keep moving forward. Just keep fighting.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's funny when I ask that question, because I think a lot of things go through people's minds. Like, okay, what version of an answer should I give for this? Like, if I think back to college and freshman year and senior year, like what have I done differently? And it's funny. I did it when I did my.
And I have a second thing I'll add to it too, if you want me to.
Yeah, well, when I had my 100th episode, I think that was the one thing that I had Ryan, all you out there is my son, and I had him do the interview with me, and I got to play the guest role like you're doing now, James, and he did the interview with me, and I don't think he asked me that question, and a lot of times you'll get who would you like to have lunch or dinner with, dead or alive. I like the twist on that, but go ahead. You wanted to add something to that?
Second really stupid thing I did, looking back, was when I went to Florida State to get my business degree, I went and I took all the different business courses that I knew I would need to run the businesses and so forth. And ultimately, I learned what I needed to learn, and I thought there wasn't anything else to learn. It was time to go start my business. And with one semester left with great grades, I called home to mom and dad and said, I'm on my way home. And they're like, what do you mean you're on your way home? And I'm like, I'm ready to start my business and get moving forward. And they're like, you got one more semester. And I'm like, I don't need this stuff. So again, looking back, dumb. I should have, again, finished that one semester, had my degree, because a degree is something you have for a lifetime that I should have had. Now, obviously, I had my 2-year degree. I took all the business courses that I needed. But again, I should have finished where I started.
Well, it's also interesting too, because I mean, you bring up a point too, because there's a lot of these athletes, these star athletes that are fortunate enough to play professionally, might not, they end up a semester or two short. And there's a lot of feel good stories that you hear about these when they are done, they go back, or maybe some of them took classes while they were playing just to ultimately.
Which is what my brother did. Ultimately, The contract he signed with the Red Sox, it included a college education. So in the off season, he was always at Florida State. Partly the reason why I was there, always taking classes. And it took him, I think, 7-8 years to get through college, because he could only take a semester in the off season of while he was playing, in the minors for about 10 years.
Yeah, no, it definitely takes time. So
he finished.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about your transition out of sport. Unfortunately, you got, cut short with injury and all that, but you played sports your whole life. I mean, and you talked about your dad and your brother and your friends. It's such it's weaved in the fabric of your life, right? So when that was over for you, was there challenges of what do I do next?
When I put my mind to something, I make it work. So I think the driving force when I first opened up my businesses was Dad was really mad at me, because he had groomed me to go to the major leagues, and he knew I was looking for an out. So he was pretty ticked when I didn't follow through, didn't go to the minors, the majors, and so forth. And he was pretty tough on me, Rob. And it was that toughness of my father to prove him wrong that ultimately was my jet fuel. That no, Dad, I am A, B, C, and D. And no, I'm not going to get a job at McDonald's. I'm going to be something. So it was my dad's pressure that I'm telling you propelled me to prove my own father wrong, who ultimately became my accountant years later, running 2 businesses, 50 to 100 people working for us and so forth. So Dad's played a big role in our lives, mentoring us in sports and continuing, whether he knew it or not, pushing me even in business.
Yeah. So how about just a couple words of advice to athletes when their time is up in the sport, when they're transitioning out?
Use your sports, career, use everything you did to transition it into something else. Sports taught you a lot. Let me get into when my businesses failed, if I could. All right. My businesses were extremely successful as far as this construction business and a limousine company. But in 2007, when the economy changed, my businesses both collapsed. We ended up in bankruptcy, foreclosure, government assistance, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. But again, part of what my father taught me, sports taught me, is when you trip, you get back up, you move forward, you keep fighting, and you never quit. You keep moving. All right. Sports put that in my blood. So even though I went from huge success, are you kidding me? I had to get back up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and that's great, because I mean that's what a lot of athletes experience. They do have that.
What I was
Whatever.
going to do, I didn't know at the time.
You never, you know what to, didn't know what happens. Let's so let's go ahead and kind of go through your journey now. So you hit the bottom, so to speak. Talk about what came next, and ultimately what's leading up to the start of 47.
Yeah. So even though I tripped, I knew I needed to get back up, knew I needed to move forward. I didn't quite know what to do at that point. Starting businesses cost money. And when my businesses were doing well, the banks were my best friend. When we lost everything, they forgot who I was. So starting another business, it wasn't in the cards. Getting a job, I'm just not that guy. So I needed to figure out something. Happy wife, happy life, right? You've heard of that verbiage. My wife comes home one day and she said that she had got us involved in something. And once I found out that it was an industry called network marketing, all I knew about that industry was that people told me that they were Ponzi schemes and pyramids and that they were no good and nobody made any money with them and all the above. But my wife forced me to go to a meeting now 16 years back that a somewhat depressed guy who wasn't 100% sure what he was going to do was given hope in a split second with an industry I knew nothing about. And what I can share with everybody here today is 16 years later, what a magnificent industry, and the level of growth that I have acquired over the last 16 years because of the industry. The fact that I could work from home and raise my own kids and I didn't have to go out and get a job and so forth. I love the industry, and that's all part of why we started our own company, because we did come across some weird owners. And sometimes when you want something done right, you need to do it yourself, which is, again, after 16 years, why it was time for us to move on from being a distributor to an owner.
Yeah, and it's so I mean, and I think you hear a lot of stories like that, just of struggles and an ultimate. And I think every industry, if you do it the right way, offers opportunities for success. And obviously you've parlayed that within the network marketing industry. I mean, there's a lot of people that have had success. There's a lot of people that have failed, a lot of people bad rap and all that. But ultimately, what you've done now is you're saying, well, I want to, you and your wife, Jamie, are taking all those years of experience and wanting to, again, we always talk about paying it forward. And you want to kind of pay it forward, but do it the right way. And that's why you're starting 47, which is really exciting. So why don't you talk a little about 47 and, what your product is and how it helps people.
Yeah. And I'm extremely passionate, just like you are, Rob, about helping people. And here are some of the facts about the world that we live in. 97% of the United States has a job. The other 3% have either a small business, a big business, or have money to invest. So what are the options for that 97% of our country, 300 plus million people, when they want something more than a job? Most people live paycheck to paycheck, which means they don't have the money nor the time to start a business. So what's their option? I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad many years ago that I suggest all of you read. All right. And Robert Kiyosaki talked about how the 97% of people that aren't quite sure what they should do, he recommended to get involved in an industry called network marketing. Because for a very small fee, you are basically partnering with a company. You're an independent representative, which means you can work when you want to work, with who you want to work with, and get paid commissions based upon, obviously, what you do. You're running your own little business, like I said, for very little amount into the business with very little overhead. So it's a fantastic business opportunity for the 97% of the people out there that are looking to learn some business and so forth, and maybe transition out of that job market into an at-home business. So extremely grateful to have the opportunity to teach that now to a community of people across the United States.
And then what type of product is 47
So
going to?
excellent question. When my wife and I started thinking about product, we had been promoting coffee for about 10, 12 years because for those of you that don't know, coffee is the second most consumed beverage on the planet. 75% of the world drinks it. So it was a great product to take what normal people are drinking, McDonald's, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever it is, and give them a healthier cup of coffee. You are what you eat and you drink. Okay. So we were changing people's lives by changing their brand of coffee. Now, when 47 came along, my wife and I looked at each other and said, should we launch with coffee, second most consumed beverage? We then said, well, water is something that we all have to drink each and every day. Water is hydration. But as athletes growing up, all of us, when we needed more than just water, we would need electrolytes, particularly a product that we drink called Gatorade, which, very interesting enough, if you look at Secretary of Health, RFK, who just banned food colorants, there's a reason those Powerades and Gatorades and so forth are bright red, bright orange, bright yellow, and so forth, that they've been banned, okay? So my wife and I said, what a perfect opportunity to launch a company, okay, provide a safe haven for all to learn and grow in, provide a product that has to do with hydration, a sports hydration that is safe for kids to seniors, everybody, okay, that is all natural, that its main active ingredient comes from coconut water. Coconut water is natural. They modify it into a powder, and then we had them mix magnesium, potassium, and a variety of other really cool all-natural products to create a product called Super Hydrate 47, which we're going to be launching in about 2 weeks. So couldn't be more exciting.
That's awesome. And it's going to be great. And one kind of follow-up question is, from an athlete perspective, how do you see athletes having success in a business like 47?
I was always a leader on my teams, always captain. Everybody encouraged and thought that I might be a teacher or a coach after finishing my sports career. What the problem was as a businessman is coaches and teachers don't get paid enough money. They don't. They're all raising our kids. They need to get paid more money. Okay. So that's what attracted me to business, was being a businessman. It gave me so much more opportunity. Interesting enough, all these years later, Rob, I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. But I'm coaching and teaching health. You are what you eat and you drink. I'm coaching and teaching business skills, personal development, A, B, C, and D. I am that teacher, that coach that everybody thought I was going to be, but just not in the way of schools and so forth. I am teaching people life skills here now at 58 years old through a company called Join 47. And I couldn't be happier to be a coach, a mentor, and a teacher to share my life experiences with people.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been awesome. And how can people find you?
Go to my Facebook page, James Toale. You can see me on social media. Our website will be live here soon, joininc.com. And you can see our website, learn more about us, or contact the amazing Rob Finkelstein. We've been best friends for about 20 years, and he can obviously forward my number to you if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. And you can find us at alumnidirect.com, and Athletes and Entrepreneurs Alumni Journey is on our YouTube channel, as well as it's across all the different networks, Spotify and Apple and all. And I really encourage people and athletes to watch and listen to these episodes. There's so much great information and nuggets, as I always say, that our guests like James provide. And I always say, if we can just help one person, obviously we want to help a lot more than that. But I think there's so much to be learned. And, the transition out of sports is tough, but there's people that care. And I think there's a lot of things that you could do out there and have a lot of success, get a lot more time out there. So once again, James, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you. Had a great time.
It's been my pleasure.